The storm and the sacrifice. The rain came down like a living beast, wild and merciless, hammering against the cracked asphalt of the old county road. Every drop struck with such force that it seemed the storm itself wanted to wash the world away. Lightning slashed the gray sky, brilliant and jagged, followed by thunder that rolled and shook the ground as though the heavens were angry. Noah Evans gripped the steering wheel of his weathered red pickup truck. The paint was faded, the engine groaned with every mile, but it was all he had. His short black hair was soaked where the leaky roof dripped, and his jaw tightened as his eyes flicked again to the dashboard clock. 50 a.m. 10 minutes. Only 10 minutes until the interview at Dalton Tech, the one chance he had waited for, prayed for, worked toward through endless nights of preparation. For months he had ironed the same shirt again and again until the fabric grew thin, memorized technical manuals by the light of a flickering bulb, and written out mock interview answers on scraps of paper until his pen nearly broke. He had rehearsed every word in front of a cracked mirror, whispering under his breath so his son wouldn't hear him stumble. Dalton Tech was more than a job. It was stability. It was hope. It was the chance to put food in the fridge without counting pennies, to finally pay the overdue bills stacked like accusations on his kitchen counter. And most of all, it was a promise to his son, Ben. Ben was only 8, with bright eyes that glowed with trust every time he looked at his father. That trust was both a blessing and a burden, because Noah knew his boy believed in him completely. He couldn't let him down, not again, not after so many close calls and disappointments. Noah tugged his jacket tighter, the cold water seeping through anyway. His hands, rough and calloused from years of labor, rested heavy on the wheel. He exhaled deeply, forcing calm into his chest. "Just a little further," he muttered to himself. "You can make it." But then, movement. Across the rain-slicked road, beyond the sheets of water and mud, a sleek black sedan sat stranded, one wheel buried deep in the ditch. Its door was flung open, and a young woman in a gray coat stumbled out. Her heels sank instantly into the muck, her hands clawing helplessly at the air as she tried to pull free. "No way!" she cried, her voice breaking in frustration. The storm swallowed her words, but Noah could hear the despair in them. Her dark hair clung wet to her face, mascara streaking down like war paint. She tugged harder, but her foot only sank deeper into the mud, her eyes darting in panic, wide and wild. For a single heartbeat, Noah froze. That interview, his one chance, the seconds ticked louder than thunder in his head. He could drive past, pretend he hadn't seen, focus on his own desperate need. Nobody would blame him, not when his whole future was on the line. But his chest tightened, and a familiar memory surged up. Years ago he had worn a different uniform, the proud dress blues of a Marine. He had lived by a code then: never abandon anyone in need. That oath was burned into his soul, and though life had stripped away his rank, his medals, his standing, it had never taken that part of him. His pulse hammered. He glanced at the clock again. 8 minutes now, every second stretched like a knife, cutting at the choice before him. He saw Ben's hopeful smile in his mind. He saw the woman's terrified eyes through the rain. "Damn it," Noah growled under his breath. His decision was already made. He slammed the truck door shut and strode into the storm. The closer he came, the clearer her fear became. She twisted at the sound of his boots sloshing through the water, her wide eyes landing on him. Just a stranger, drenched, clothes worn, face hardened by struggle. "I don't need help," she snapped, her voice sharp but trembling at the edges. Pride and panic clashed in every syllable. "You'll sprain your ankle if you keep pulling like that," Noah answered evenly, his tone calm and steady. His voice was like an anchor in the chaos. She struggled again, and again the mud pulled her down. Her pride broke faster than her strength, and finally she gave a single, reluctant nod. Noah crouched low, his hands steady as he gripped her soaked heel. His fingers were rough, calloused, but sure. With one strong pull, her foot slid free of the trap. She stumbled back, catching herself, breathing hard, staring at him as though she couldn't believe anyone had come. Without waiting for thanks, Noah jogged back to his truck. He reached into the bed and pulled out an old rusted tow chain, the kind he had kept around for years, more habit than expectation. With practiced ease, he hooked it to the sedan's bumper, ignoring the rain that hammered his back like nails. "Get inside!" he shouted. She hesitated, then obeyed, climbing into the driver's seat with trembling hands. Noah climbed back into his pickup, started the engine and pressed the gas. The truck roared, tires spinning against the slick asphalt, mud spraying in every direction. He gritted his teeth, muscles straining as he coaxed the machine forward. The chain groaned, the sedan's tires screeched, but slowly, steadily it lurched free from the sucking mud. With a final roar, both vehicles settled back onto solid ground. Noah unhooked the chain, his breath heavy, his clothes plastered to his skin. He turned without a word, heading for his truck again. "Wait!" Her voice cut through the storm, sharp and commanding. He paused, his hand on the door. She lowered her window, her hand reaching out with a folded bill, her expression guarded but grateful. "At least take this." Noah shook his head, refusing to meet her eyes. "No need, I'm already late for my interview." Her brows lifted. "Interview?" "Dalton, Tech," he said simply, climbing back into the truck. His voice carried no bitterness, only the weary acceptance of a man who knew his chance had slipped away. The clock read 9:07 a.m. Fate had already made the decision for him. The pickup rumbled forward, crawling back onto the flooded road. Noah's chest was heavy, his stomach hollow. Every dream, every sacrifice, every prayer had led to this morning, and now it was gone. But as the storm swallowed his figure, the woman in the sedan watched him go. Her lips parted in disbelief. Her hand still clutched the money he refused. Her eyes flickered with something she hadn't felt in a long time, something she couldn't name yet. Noah drove on, crushed and strangely at peace. He had lost everything, and yet he had done the right thing. He didn't know it then, but the choice he made in that storm was not the end of his story. It was the beginning. Consequences and closed doors. The storm had passed by the time Noah Evans pulled into the cracked driveway of his small rented home, but the damage in his heart was far worse than any thunderclouds could deliver. His old red pickup groaned as he turned the key to silence, leaving only the drip of water from the gutters and the occasional rustle of leaves in the aftermath of the storm. He sat in the driver's seat for a long time, his hands still gripping the wheel, his knuckles white. The air smelled of wet asphalt and regret. The dashboard clock read 9:32 a.m. The interview was long over. Dalton Tech wasn't the kind of company to wait for anyone, especially not for a man like him. He knew that. He had known it even as he hooked the tow chain onto the stranger's car. Still, facing the truth now was heavier than he had expected. With a long sigh, he pulled the crumpled tie from his neck and tossed it onto the passenger seat. The fabric was cheap, borrowed from a thrift store rake, but it had been his small symbol of hope. Now it lay discarded, just another reminder of a door slammed shut. Inside the small house, his son Ben sat cross-legged on the living room floor, bent over a battered set of action figures. His dark curls bounced as he turned at the sound of the door opening. "Dad!" Ben leapt up, his eyes bright, his smile wide. "How'd it go? Did they like you?" Noah's chest tightened. That smile was the fuel that kept him moving, and now it felt like a weight crushing him. He forced a small smile, ruffling Ben's hair. "It didn't work out today, champ," he said softly. Ben's brow furrowed, confusion clouding his innocent face. "But you said this was the one, the big one." "Yeah." Noah crouched down so his eyes were level with his son's. "Sometimes life doesn't go the way we plan, buddy, but we don't stop trying. Ever, you hear me?" Ben nodded slowly, though the disappointment was written plain on his small face. He trusted his father, but even trust couldn't erase hunger or overdue bills. That night, after Ben was asleep, Noah sat at the small kitchen table. The dim bulb above flickered as he sorted through the pile of envelopes, rent past due, utilities demanding payment, medical insurance he could no longer afford. Each envelope felt like a hammer against his chest. He rubbed his temples, his thoughts circling the same painful truth. He had thrown away his chance. But deep inside, another voice whispered, "You did what was right." The storm, the woman, the choice. It all replayed in his mind, every detail etched sharp as glass. He didn't know her name. He didn't know why her face lingered in his memory, but he knew the moment had defined him. Across town, while Noah sat in his small kitchen drowning in silence, Amelia Cross sat in her high-rise apartment, her reflection staring back at her from the rain-streaked glass windows. The city lights shimmered below, but her thoughts weren't on the skyline. They were trapped in the storm, in the empty memory of a stranger's steady voice cutting through chaos. Not everyone lives only for themselves. Sometimes you help simply because it's the right thing to do. His words had struck something inside her she couldn't explain. Amelia Cross was not the kind of woman easily moved. At 32, she was the youngest CEO in her company's history, a self-made millionaire who had built her empire on precision, discipline, and ruthless efficiency. She had clawed her way up in a world of boardrooms filled with men who doubted her, sneered at her, underestimated her. And she had learned early. Everyone wanted something. Trust was a luxury she could not afford. Gratitude was weakness. Yet that man, soaked, exhausted, late for an interview, had refused her money. He had walked away with nothing but his principles. She poured herself a glass of wine, the rich red liquid swirling like her restless thoughts. She hated that she couldn't stop thinking about him. The name had slipped from his lips as he left. Dalton Tech. Amelia set the glass down and opened her laptop. A few keystrokes later, she was searching. Dalton Tech. Candidate list. Interviews scheduled for today. Her position afforded her certain resources, private databases, networks that whispered details. It didn't take long to find his name. Noah Evans. Age 36. Background, U.S. Marine Corps veteran, honorable discharge. Work history, scattered, mostly manual labor, temporary contracts. Education, unfinished degree, abandoned after deployment. Family, widower, single father of one child. Her eyes lingered on the phrase, widower, single father. Something twisted in her chest. She scrolled further, reading his file. No disciplinary marks, no debts beyond the crushing everyday kind. His references described him as hardworking, dependable, stubbornly principled. Amelia closed the laptop with a snap. She hated the feeling stirring in her. Pity was dangerous. Sympathy was poison. She had built her life by ignoring such weaknesses. And yet, the next morning, Noah rose before dawn the way he always did. Sleep never came easy anymore. He brewed weak coffee, packed a lunch for Ben, and walked him to the school bus stop, forcing smiles and jokes to cover the ache inside. When the bus rumbled away, Noah stood in the drizzle, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. He had no plan, no job, no path forward. Then a sleek black car pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down. Amelia Cross sat inside, her face calm, unreadable, her dark hair gleaming even in the gray morning light. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. "You missed your interview," she said finally, her tone clipped, businesslike. Noah's jaw tightened. "Yeah, life happens. You missed it because of me." He didn't answer. Her gaze sharpened. "You could have driven past. Most people would have. Why didn't you?" Noah met her eyes, his voice steady. "Because that's not who I am." Something flickered in her expression, but it vanished as quickly as it came. She leaned back in her seat. "You're looking for work," she said, more a statement than a question. "I was." "Get in." Noah hesitated. Every instinct in him resisted charity, resisted the idea of being some wealthy woman's project. But another glance at the empty horizon, at the long day waiting ahead with no paycheck, no prospects. He opened the door and slid into the leather seat. Amelia's lips curved in the faintest trace of a smile. "Let's see what you're really made of, Mr. Evans." The CEO's test. The sleek car carried Noah across the city like a vessel from another world. He sat rigidly in the passenger seat, his worn jacket dripping onto the immaculate leather. Every detail of the vehicle screamed wealth: polished wood trim, quiet hum of the engine, even the faint scent of expensive perfume clinging to the air. Noah felt out of place, a shadow sitting beside Brill. Lyance. He kept his eyes forward, his jaw set, his thoughts circling like storm clouds. He didn't know why he had agreed to get in. Pride told him he should have walked away. But necessity, that unyielding master, whispered of bills, of rent, of Ben's hungry eyes. Amelia Cross didn't speak at first. Her hands rested lightly on the wheel, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. She was composed, every gesture precise, as though silence itself obeyed her command. Finally, she broke it. "You said you were a Marine." "Was," Noah corrected quietly. "Why did you leave?" He exhaled slowly. "Because sometimes service takes more than it gives back. I came home to a son who needed a father more than a flag." Amelia's eyes flickered, but she said nothing. They pulled up before a glass tower that seemed to scrape the sky. The words Cross Enterprises glimmered in silver above the entrance. Employees in sharp suits streamed in and out, their polished shoes clicking like clockwork across marble floors. Noah stared up at the building. "This yours?" "Yes." He let out a low whistle, more disbelief than admiration. Inside, heads turned the moment they entered. Amelia walked with the grace of someone accustomed to command, but the presence of Noah beside her drew murmurs. His faded jeans, mud-stained boots, and weary expression clashed against the immaculate world of tailored suits and silk ties. "Who's that?" whispered one employee. "Did she bring him in?" another murmured. Amelia ignored them, striding straight to the private elevator. Noah followed, his shoulders squared, refusing to shrink under the weight of their stares. Upstairs, her office looked out over the city like a throne room. The glass walls shimmered, the furniture sleek and minimalist. A desk of polished steel gleamed under the morning light. Amelia turned to him. "You want work. I'll give you a chance, but understand this. I don't believe in handouts. You'll earn every cent." Noah's eyes narrowed. "I don't want handouts. Never have." "Good." She pressed a button on her phone. "Send Marcus in." Moments later, a tall man entered, his suit sharp, his expression sharper. He looked Noah up and down with thinly veiled disdain. "This is Marcus Hale," Amelia said. "Chief of Operations. He'll find a place for you, something to test your ability. If you're half the man I think you are, you'll prove it." Marcus's lips curved into a cold smile. "Of course." He led Noah out of the office, his polished shoes clicking against the floor. As they entered the bustling lower levels, Marcus's tone shifted, dripping with contempt. "You must think you're special," he sneered. "The CEO herself dragging you in here. But let's be clear, you don't belong. This is a company of excellence. Men like you're just placeholders." Noah didn't flinch. He'd heard worse in the barracks, on the battlefield, in the streets where he'd worked odd jobs just to keep food on the table. Words were easy. "I didn't come here to belong," Noah said evenly. "I came here to work." Marcus's sneer deepened. "Then you'll start at the bottom. Warehouse, 12-hour shifts. Let's see if the soldier can handle real labor." The warehouse. The warehouse was nothing like the polished upper floors. It smelled of dust, oil, and sweat. Crates towered like walls, forklifts hummed, workers shouted over the roar of machinery. Marcus gestured broadly. "This is where we weed out the weak. Think you can handle it?" Noah's eyes scanned the space, his body already shifting into the rhythm of work. "Point me where you need me." And so it began. He lifted crates twice his weight, his muscles straining, sweat pouring down his back. Hours passed in a blur of labor, but his movements stayed sharp, efficient, disciplined. Other workers watched with curiosity, whispering about the stranger who worked like a machine. During lunch, when others sat slouched over sandwiches, Noah stood outside, staring at the horizon. He ate quietly, his thoughts never far from Ben. Amelia observes. Upstairs, Amelia watched through the security feed, her eyes fixed on the figure moving steadily among the crates. He never complained, never paused longer than necessary. When another worker slipped, nearly crushed by a falling box, Noah darted forward, catching the weight on his shoulders and lowering it safely. She leaned back in her chair, unsettled again by the man's quiet strength. Marcus entered her office later that day, irritation etched into his face. "He's strong," Marcus admitted reluctantly, "but strength isn't skill. He doesn't belong here." Amelia tapped her pen against the desk. "Sometimes character matters more than skill. Skills can be taught. Integrity cannot." Marcus stiffened but said nothing. The test continues. Days turned into a week. Noah arrived early, worked late, and left without complaint. He never sought praise, never explained himself. Yet slowly, the whispers among employees shifted. The man who had arrived looking out of place now commanded respect, not with words, but with relentless action. One evening, as Noah was leaving, Amelia intercepted him in the lobby. "You lasted longer than Marcus expected," she said. Noah shrugged. "Work is work. You give your best or you don't show up." Her lips twitched, the faintest hint of a smile. "And if I offered something more? A role with responsibility?" He studied her carefully. "Depends. Am I here because you think I can do the job, or because you feel guilty I missed my interview?" The question caught her off guard. Few dared to speak to her that way. She stared at him, her eyes sharp, searching. Finally she answered, "Because I think you might surprise me." Ben meets Amelia. That weekend, Noah brought Ben to the company's family day, hesitant but unwilling to deny his son the chance. The boy's eyes widened at the sea. Skyscraper, the polished floors, the endless trays of food. Amelia spotted them across the room. For the first time in years, her expression softened. Ben tugged shyly at his father's sleeve before stepping forward. "Thank you for helping my dad," the boy said earnestly. Amelia blinked, unprepared for the warmth in his small voice. Something inside her chest cracked just slightly. She knelt, meeting his eyes. "You have a brave father," she said softly. Ben grinned. "I know." As she rose, her gaze lingered on Noah. For the first time, she allowed herself to wonder. Had fate brought him into her life for more than just a storm? Breaking barriers. The morning sun spilled across the glass tower of Cross Enterprises, painting it gold against the sky. To most of the city, the building was a monument to power and wealth. But to Noah Evans, it was still a battlefield, just one without gunfire. A week of sweat in the warehouse hadn't broken him. If anything, it had hardened his resolve. But Noah soon learned that brute strength wasn't the only test waiting for him. The higher he climbed, the more invisible walls rose to meet him. The whispered doubts. On the upper floors, whispers followed him like shadows. Men in pressed suits raised brows as he passed. Women in heels glanced at his worn jacket, then exchanged looks that needed no words. "Amelia's pet project," one voice muttered in the hall. "Charity case," another sneered near the elevators. "He won't last a month, not here." Noah heard them all, but he kept walking, his stride steady, his jaw unshaken. He had learned long ago that respect wasn't given. It was earned in silence, through consistency, through grit. But still, the sting was real. That night, in their small kitchen, Ben asked him, "Dad, do they like you there?" Noah forced a smile. "Doesn't matter if they like me, buddy. What matters is I do the job right." Ben nodded slowly, but his young eyes carried Waterloo, Ori Marcus's trap. Marcus Hale wasn't done with him. To Marcus, Noah was a threat. Not because of his resume, but because of what he represented. Integrity was dangerous in a place where ambition often twisted men into something less. One morning, Marcus handed Noah a file. "You'll deliver these reports directly to the board meeting today. Make sure they're on time." Noah frowned. "Aren't couriers usually assigned?" Marcus's smile was thin. "Consider this, a chance to step up." The truth revealed itself minutes later when Noah walked into the boardroom, reports in hand. A half-dozen executives sat around the long, polished table, their gazes sharp as knives. At the head sat Amelia Cross, calm, unreadable. The silence was immediate. Every eye turned to him. A man in an old shirt carrying their documents as if he didn't belong. "Who is this?" one executive demanded, disdain dripping from every syllable. Noah's grip on the folder tightened, but his voice remained steady. "Noah Evans, reporting as instructed." Whispers rose, sharper this time. Marcus leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Gentlemen, this is Ms. Cross's newest hire." The word hire sounded like an insult. One board member chuckled. "Tell me, Ms. Cross, is this your idea of innovation? Hiring day laborers from the street?" Laughter rippled, but Amelia's hand rose and silence fell. Her eyes met Noah's, steady, unwavering. "What matters here is results. Mr. Evans has proven his worth already." The room quieted, but the hostility didn't vanish. Marcus's smirk faltered, yet his eyes still burned with challenge. Noah bowed his head slightly, placed the reports on the table, and left without another word. He didn't need to stay. His actions would speak louder than their doubt. The work speaks. In the weeks that followed, Noah threw himself into every task, no matter how menial. Sorting logistics, hikes, repairing systems, coordinating with warehouse staff. Slowly, cracks formed in the prejudice around him. When shipments fell behind, it was Noah who organized teams with military efficiency, catching delays before they spiraled into disaster. When a minor fire broke out in storage, it was Noah who led workers to safety and contained the blaze before emergency crews arrived. Employees who had once whispered began to nod at him in quiet respect. The Marine, they started calling him. Not the charity hire, not the outsider, the Marine. Amelia watched it all from her office, her guarded mask slipping more each day. Noah wasn't just surviving her world, he was reshaping it, one act of integrity at a time. Cracks in the CEO's armor, but it wasn't just the company changing, it was Amelia too. She found herself lingering near the warehouse more often, watching the way Noah carried himself, the way he spoke to everyone with the same steady respect, whether janitor or junior manager. The way his son's name slipped into his stories, reminding her of something she'd buried long ago: humanity. One afternoon, she caught Ben waiting in the lobby again, homework in hand while Noah finished his shift. Amelia approached, her heels clicking softly on the marble. "You come here often," she said gently. Ben looked up, eyes bright. "Yeah, sometimes Dad has to work late, but he always lets me come along. Says hard work is something I should see." Amelia's throat tightened. She crouched to meet his gaze. "And what do you see?" Ben grinned. "I see a hero." She blinked, caught off guard. Her own reflection in the glass above seemed foreign. For years she had measured success in profit margins and quarterly reports. Now, hearing a child call his father a hero, it unsettled her in ways she couldn't name. Crisis. It came late on a Friday evening. A critical shipment was delayed at the docks, millions of dollars worth of contracts on the line. The logistics team panicked. Marcus ragged. Phones rang unanswered. Amelia summoned her executives, but the room buzzed with chaos. "We'll lose the clients," one barked. "It's over." Then Noah stepped forward. "Let me handle it." All eyes turned. Amelia's brows lifted. "How?" "Give me a team, a truck, and authority to make calls." Silence. The board scoffed. "Absurd," one snapped. "He's not even management." But Amelia saw something in his eyes, the same unshakable steadiness she had seen in the storm. "You'll have it," she said firmly. And so Noah moved like a soldier into battle. He rallied warehouse crews, redirected routes, negotiated directly with dock workers, even climbed into a truck himself to haul crates when manpower fell short. His voice cut through panic like steel. Focus. Work together. Nobody fails tonight. By dawn, the shipment was delivered. Every contract saved. Aftermath. The boardroom was silent the next morning as Amelia announced the results. "Mr. Evans ensured we kept every client," she said coolly. "I expect each of you to remember that." Noah stood at the back, his arms folded, unwilling to bask in glory. For him, it had been duty, responsibility, the right thing to do. But Amelia's gaze lingered on him longer than necessary, her mask softening. In that silence, something undeniable had shifted. Noah was no longer an outsider. He was indispensable. And though neither would admit it yet, the bond between them was no longer just circumstance. It was trust. Fragile. Growing. Dangerous. A new beginning. The storm that had first bound their fates together was a memory now, but for Noah Evans, life still felt like walking through weather that tested every step. Only this time, he wasn't walking alone. The crisis at the docks had shifted everything. In one night, Noah had turned from the charity hire into a man the entire company now whispered about with reluctant respect. The Marine. The man who had saved contracts worth millions. The one Amelia Cross had trusted when no one else would. But even as his reputation grew, Noah's humility remained. He still woke before dawn, brewed weak coffee, packed Ben's lunch, and walked him to the school bus with the same steady devotion. He still worked harder than anyone, never asking for praise. Yet Amelia noticed. Always. The offer. One morning, Amelia summoned him to her office. Her gaze was steady, but something softer lingered beneath her usual composure. "You saved this company last week," she said plainly. Noah shifted uncomfortably. "I just did what had to be done." "That's the point," she replied. "When others saw chaos, you saw solutions. When others protected themselves, you carried the weight. That's leadership, Noah. Real leadership." He frowned. "I'm no executive." Her lips curved slightly. "Not yet." She slid a folder across the desk. Inside were documents, crisp and official. A contract. "Operations manager," she explained. "It's more responsibility, more pay. Enough to give you and your son the stability you've been chasing." Noah's breath caught. It was more than he had ever dreamed. A salary that could cover rent, bills, even a future for Ben. But doubt flickered in his eyes. "Why me? You've got a dozen men in suits who'd kill for this role." "Because they'd take it for power," Amelia said quietly. "You'd take it for responsibility." Her eyes locked on his, unwavering. "I don't hire resumes, Noah. I hire character, and you've proven yours 10 times over." For a long moment the office was silent except for the hum of the city below. Finally Noah closed the folder, his hand firm. "I'll accept," he said, his voice steady. "But only if you understand one thing. I'm not here because I owe you. I'm here because I believe I can make a difference." Amelia's lips twitched into something rare, a genuine smile. "That's exactly why I want you here." The resistance. Not everyone shared her vision. At the next board meeting, Marcus Hale erupted. "This is insanity," he shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "A man with no degree, no corporate experience managing operations. You're risking everything." Amelia's gaze was cool as steel. "No, I'm investing in someone who has already proven more capable than half this room." Marcus sneered. "What happens when he fails? When his lack of polish embarrasses this company?" Before Amelia could respond, Noah's voice rang out from the back of the room. "Then I'll own it. Every mistake, every setback. Because that's what real leadership is." The room fell silent. Executives shifted uncomfortably. Amelia leaned forward, her voice low but sharp. You asked what happens when he fails. I'll tell you what happens when he succeeds. He proves every one of you wrong. Marcus sat back, seething, but he had no reply. The growth. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. Noah threw himself into the new role with the same grit he had carried through storms, warehouses, and crises. He listened before he spoke, learning the rhythms of supply chains, the intricacies of contracts, the pulse of the company. He made mistakes, of course, but each time he owned them, learned, and grew. Workers who had once sneered now came to him for advice. Executives who had doubted him now leaned forward when he spoke. Slowly, walls of class and prejudice began to crumble. Ben noticed too. His father came home with new energy, new light in his eyes. For the first time in years, hope filled their small home like sunshine through broken blinds. "Dad," Ben whispered one night as Noah tucked him into bed, "I think Mom would be proud." Noah's chest ached, but he smiled softly. "I hope so, buddy. I really hope so." The bond. Amelia found herself drawn to the warehouse less and to Noah more. Their conversations grew longer, drifting beyond work into life, into philosophy, into the quiet spaces of trust. One evening after a long day, they stood together by the window of her office, the city lights glowing beneath them. "You know," Amelia said softly, "the night we met, I thought you were a fool." Noah chuckled. Wouldn't be the first time someone thought that. "But you weren't," she continued, her eyes distant. "You were exactly what I needed to see, though I didn't know it then. You reminded me that money doesn't define worth, that sometimes the strongest people are the ones no one notices." Noah studied her, his expression unreadable. "And you reminded me that not everyone at the top forgets what it means to be human." Their eyes met, steady, unguarded. Something passed between them, something fragile, dangerous, undeniable. Neither spoke it aloud, but both felt it. A new beginning. Months later, the company celebrated its strongest quarter in years. Amelia stood before her employees, her voice confident, her presence commanding. But when she spoke of their success, she gestured toward Noah. "This man," she said firmly, "is proof that integrity still matters, that doing the right thing, even when it costs you, creates a future stronger than profit margins. He is the reason we stand here today." Applause thundered. Noah shifted uncomfortably, but his son's proud smile from the front row anchored him. As the crowd cheered, Amelia's gaze lingered on him. For the first time in years, her heart felt lighter, as though the storm that had raged inside her for so long had finally calmed. And Noah? He looked out at the faces before him, at his son, at Amelia, at the life he had never expected. He thought back to that morning in the rain, the choice that had cost him everything, and given him even more. Sometimes fate tests a man, strips him of what he thinks he needs, only to reveal what he truly deserves. For Noah Evans, the storm had not been an ending. It had been the beginning.